The images are confronting. Elders immobilized in their chairs, prevented from standing, confined in zipped garments to stop them moving freely through the world. It is a vision of care reduced to control. This is from an article published in Croaky Health Media in 2025, titled Beyond Punishment and Restrictive Practices, Call for a More Caring Society. There are warnings for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander readers for names and references to people who have died. Australia has built an entire architecture of confinement around the people it refuses to care for. Prisons for the criminalised, psychiatric units for the distressed, aged care homes for the frail, and detention centres for the displaced, according to Tabitha Lean and Debbie Kilroy, OAM, members of the National Network of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. A truly caring society would dismantle these human warehouses and invest in relationships instead. Properly funded, community-controlled disability services, culturally grounded healing programs, peer-run crisis supports, housing, and income security, they write. Tabitha Lean and Debbie Kilroy write, when news broke this month that residents of a South Australian government-run aged care home were being strapped into lap belts and zipped into dignity suits to stop them undressing, the public reaction was one of disbelief and outrage. People wanted to imagine that this was a relic of another era, something that happened long ago, somewhere else, before the Royal Commissions, before we claimed to have learned how to care. But it wasn't. It was here, now, in 2025, in a government facility built to protect those living with dementia and complex disability. The images are confronting. Elders immobilised in their chairs, prevented from standing, confined in zipped garments to stop them moving freely through the world. It is a vision of care reduced to control. When pressed to explain, the official responses came quickly, and among them, staff shortages. There weren't enough workers on the floor, we were told, to safely supervise residents. Restraints were used to manage risk until help could be found. It's a phrase that travels easily between institutions. We hear it in prisons when women are locked down for 23 hours a day because there aren't enough officers to open the yard. We hear it in psychiatric wards when people are chemically sedated or physically restrained for their own safety. Across every site of confinement, the same story repeats. When the system fails, those trapped inside are punished for it. Across Australia, from nursing homes to prisons to psychiatric hospitals, this language of care and safety has become the moral cover for violence. These are sites built on control, warehouses for those our society has deemed too old, too mad, too disabled, too dangerous to be free. Restraint masqueraded as care as the state-run Northgate facility in Adelaide's northeast, federal regulators found 9 residents restrained with lap belts, 5 in one-piece suits designed to stop them undressing, and 10 confined behind bed rails. This was not a rogue nurse or a bad night shift. It was routine practice, endorsed and normalised within a system that speaks the language of protection while enacting control. Even after being audited and warned by the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission in late 2023, inspectors returned months later to find the same practices continuing. The government's explanation? Staffing shortages and confusion over which national guidelines applied. When asked if the public had a right to know, South Australia's Human Services Minister said no. Families were informed privately, she said, and besides, the department was working diligently to improve governance. That bureaucratic tone, the calm promise of review and remediation, is how systemic abuse hides in plain sight. The Oakden elder abuse scandal was meant to be the line in the sand back in 2018. Yet here we are again, watching the state strap down our elderly and call it safety. A lap belt is not safety. A dignity suit is not care. These are restraints, tools for compliance that reduce human beings to manageable bodies. From care to custody, the same logic. The excuses at Northgate echo word for word what we heard from correctional officers, hospital staff, and youth prison administrators. When prisons go into rolling lockdowns because staffing levels are unsafe, it is women and children who bear the cost, missing visits, education, exercise, phone calls, and showers. When psychiatric units are understaffed, the solution is to increase chemical restraint, to isolate people in seclusion rooms, to use mechanical straps or security guards to pin down distressed patients. These are not isolated failings. They are the logical outcome of a nation that responds to vulnerability with confinement. According to the Australia Institute of Health and Welfare in 2023 and 2024, there were more than 9,400 seclusion events in public psychiatric hospitals, each lasting an average of 6 hours. In that same year, there were over 15,000 physical restraint events and 783 mechanical restraint incidents. Every one of these events represents a person, often someone in distress, held down or locked away under the banner of care. Even as governments boast that seclusion rates have fallen, the persistence of thousands of restraints every year tells the truth. Coercion remains central to psychiatric care, and like prisons, these spaces overwhelmingly confine those already marginalized, people living in poverty, with disability, trauma, or addiction. The re-emergence of torture. Nowhere is the continuum between care and custody clearer than in the Northern Territory's decision to bring back spit hoods, a cruel device not used by police forces around the country and condemned by the United Nations as a form of torture. The Northern Territory's changes to the Youth Justice Act removes the safeguard that detention be a last resort, expands use of force powers, and explicitly allows spit hoods to be used on children. It was images from the Dondale Youth Detention Centre that seared this device into national consciousness. A terrified Aboriginal child, hooded, shackled to a restraint chair for over 2 hours. The footage, aired on the ABC's Four Corners in 2016, shocked the world and triggered a royal commission. That inquiry called spit hoods inhumane and recommended their complete abolition. Yet, less than a decade later, the Northern Territory government has chosen to bring them back. First Peoples Disability Network CEO Damien Griffiths described the reintroduction of the very instrument that symbolises the horrors of Dondale as a deeply disturbing and profound insult to every survivor and every family who bravely gave evidence to the Royal Commission. In a territory where 94% of imprisoned children are Aboriginal and almost half live with multiple disabilities, these laws will punish children for the state's own neglect, locking them up for being Aboriginal, poor, disabled, traumatised, and unsupported. The Northern Territory government justifies its decision with the same logic used in aged care homes and psychiatric wards, the language of safety, management, and care. But behind those euphemisms sits something far older, the drive to control behaviour through fear and force. In one breath, officials speak of protecting staff and the community. In the next, they sanction the use of devices whose sole purpose is to subdue and silence. Spit hoods, like lap belts and seclusion rooms, are not instruments of safety, they are instruments of discipline. They are tools designed to enforce compliance, to immobilize the non-compliant, to turn human distress into something punishable. The Royal Commission into the Protection and Detention of Children in the Northern Territory called their use inhumane and recommended a total ban. When the Northern Territory government now reauthorises these devices, it is not acting out of ignorance, it is acting in defiance of evidence, international law, and basic decency. It is choosing control over care, punishment over protection, and obedience over humanity. The ghosts of Dondale and Yatala. For Aboriginal communities, the return of spit hoods reopens wounds that never healed. It was a spit hood that covered Wayne Fella Morrison's face when he was pulled unconscious from a transport van at Yatala Labour Prison in 2016. He'd been restrained, cuffed, and hooded by 7 officers. He never regained consciousness. His sister Latoya Rule led the tireless campaign to ban spit hoods nationwide, a campaign that succeeded in South Australia in 2021 after years of grief and protest. That same year, Salisa Tafefa, a 44-year-old woman, died in Townsville's Women's Corrections Centre while forced to wear a spit hood, crying, "I can't breathe," at least 4 times before she passed away. Every few years, the names change, but the pattern stays the same. The state commits violence, the public expresses horror, inquiries are launched, and promises are made. Then, slowly, quietly, the same practices creep back, justified as temporary, necessary, or not like last time. The same cycle happened after Oakden, after Dondale, after Yatala. Each scandal is treated as an anomaly rather than the symptom of a deeper sickness, a carceral logic that runs through every institution designed to manage rather than support human beings in distress. The myth of safety. The word safety appears in every press release about these incidents. Safety of residents or prisoners, safety of staff, safety of the community. But what safety means in these contexts is institutional safety. the safety of the system to continue functioning without scrutiny. In aged care, safety means preventing falls, not protecting dignity. In psychiatric wards, it means preventing liability, not preventing trauma. In children's prisons, it means protecting officers, not children. Safety has become a euphemism for control. It is invoked to rationalize violence and erase accountability. When an elderly person is strapped to a bed to prevent a fall, when a child is spit-hooded to protect staff, when a woman in distress is pinned down and injected for her own good, we are witnessing the same logic in different uniforms. Warehousing the unwanted. Australia has built an entire architecture of confinement around the people it refuses to care for. Prisons for the criminalised, psychiatric units for the distressed, aged care homes for the frail, detention centres for the displaced. Each institution claims to exist for safety, treatment or rehabilitation, but each function as a warehouse for those rendered inconvenient to the social order. Inside, people are managed through restrictive practices, lap belts, spit hoods, seclusion rooms, chemical sedations, lockdowns. Outside, we are told that these are necessary measures, regrettable but unavoidable. The lie that sustains the whole system is that violence can be justified if it's done in the name of care. Camouflaging language. The Northgate facility did not describe its actions as abuse. The department's spokesperson talked of risk assessment, governance improvement, and clinical leadership. The Northern Territory government does not say it is reauthorising torture, it says it is ensuring officer safety. Psychiatric units don't call it punishment, they call it de-escalation or regulation. This bureaucratic language performs moral laundering, turning cruelty into policy. It allows ministers to apologise for shortcomings rather than acknowledging harm. It keeps the public calm and the institutions running. But for those inside, these euphemisms are meaningless. A restraint is a restraint. Whether you call it a lap belt or a safety device, a hood over a child's head is not risk mitigation, it is torture. Abolition across the continuum. To challenge these systems, we have to name them for what they are, carceral. Abolition is not just about prisons, it's about every space where the state cages human beings and calls it care. It's about recognising that aged care homes, psychiatric wards and youth prisons are not separated worlds but connected sites of social disposal. The solution to abuse in aged care is not moral surveillance but more freedom. The solution to crises in psychiatric wards is not restraint but community-based support, housing and peer-led care. The solution to youth violence is not spit hoods but the abolition of child imprisonment altogether. Beyond punishment and toward care. If we can see the cruelty of strapping an elderly person to a bed, we must also see the cruelty of hooding a child. If we can recognise the trauma of a seclusion room, we must recognise the trauma of a prison cell. These practices come from the same place, a belief that control is care and that safety can be achieved through domination. A truly caring society would dismantle these human warehouses and invest in relationships instead. Properly funded, community-controlled disability services, culturally grounded healing programs, peer-run crisis supports, housing and income security. Because every restraint, every belt, rail, cuff, hood is a confession that we have failed to build the kind of world where people can be safe without being locked away. Australia's institutions are full of people society has chosen not to see, the elderly, children, people in distress. We call their confinement care, their restraints safety, and their silence compliance. But make no mistake, whether it's a bed rail or a spit hood, it's all the same story. Punishment disguised as protection. You can read this article on Croaky Health Media. The link is below in the description of the video. Thanks.